The ship hung silently above the human mining colony on 442B. Inside, Overseer watched the strange creatures below through his viewing screen. They were small, soft, and fragile. Their bodies had no armor, no claws, no natural weapons of any kind. They lived for less than 100 cycles, which was nothing compared to the 1,000-year of his own species. Primitives, said to himself as he recorded his observations. Category 7 at best, perhaps Category 8, they pose no threat to the Dominion. For 3 months, the watched humanity in secret. They studied their ships, their weapons, and their behavior. Everything they saw confirmed their first impression. These humans were weak. They fought among themselves constantly. Their technology was basic compared to the great civilizations of the galaxy. They would make excellent servants once they were conquered. High Prelate received report with great satisfaction. The Dominion had conquered over 200 species across the galaxy. Not once had they lost a war. Most species surrendered the moment they saw the Dominion fleet. The few who resisted were crushed within days. Send an envoy to there, commanded. Give them the standard offer, surrender or face destruction. The Dominion envoy arrived at Earth's orbital station on a bright Tuesday morning. The ship was massive, 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. It blocked out the sun as it approached, casting a shadow over half the planet below. Admiral Park stood in the station's command center and watched the alien vessel dock. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire life preparing for a moment like this, even though he had never truly believed it would come. "They want to talk," his aide reported. "They say they come with an offer of peace." Park knew better than to believe that. Still, he agreed to meet with them. The envoy was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. It looked down at the human admiral with obvious contempt. It did not bother to learn his name. "Your species has been evaluated," the envoy announced. "You have been found acceptable for service to the Dominion. You will surrender all military forces, all technology, and all governmental authority. Your population will be distributed across Dominion worlds to serve as laborers. This is not a negotiation. This is your only option." Park listened without expression. When the envoy finished, he asked a simple question. "And if we refuse?" The envoy seemed confused by the question. In its experience, no species had ever asked this. "Refusal is not possible," it said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "The Dominion has never been defeated. We have destroyed civilizations far greater than yours. Your entire species would be eliminated within a single rotation cycle. Surely you understand this." "I understand," Park replied. "You have 7 days to leave our space. After that, any Dominion vessel in human territory will be considered hostile and destroyed." The envoy stared at him for a long moment. Then it laughed. The sound was cold and harsh, like metal scraping against stone. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human. I will inform High Prelate of your response. He will find it amusing before he orders your extinction." The envoy left. Park immediately called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Coalition. Doctor was the first to arrive. She was the coalition's chief expert on alien species, though until today her job had been mostly theoretical. She had spent 20 years studying the possibility of first contact. Now it had finally happened, and it was worse than anything she had imagined. "They've conquered over 200 species," she told the assembled leaders. "Some of those civilizations were millions of years old. They had technology we can barely understand, and they all fell to the Dominion." "Then what chance do we have?" someone asked. Paused before answering. "Maybe none, but there's something important in my research. Every species the Dominion conquered had one thing in common. They all surrendered, either immediately or after a single decisive battle. They have never fought a prolonged war. They've never faced an enemy that refused to give up. Because no one was stupid enough to try, another leader said. Or brave enough, Park replied quietly. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for surrender. They said it was the only way to save humanity from total destruction. Others wanted to fight, even if it meant death. In the end, the decision came down to a simple vote. The result was not even close. Park sent humanity's response to the Dominion the next morning. It was a single word, transmitted across every frequency the aliens might be monitoring. No. High Prelate received the message while eating his morning meal. He read it 3 times, certain there must be some mistake. No species had ever refused the Dominion's offer, not once in 5,000 years of conquest. They said no, Warlord asked, equally confused. Just no. It appears so, replied. He was not angry, he was amused. These humans were like insects that did not understand the boot about to crush them. Very well, mobilize a standard pacification fleet. 300 ships should be more than enough. I want this finished within 1 rotation cycle. It will be done, promised. These creatures will learn their place. On Earth, humanity prepared for war. Factories that had been building civilian ships were converted to produce weapons. Young men and women volunteered for military service in numbers not seen in centuries. Scientists worked around the clock to improve their technology. Park stood on the observation deck of the orbital station and watched the activity below. Ships launched from every continent. Satellites moved into defensive positions. The entire planet was transforming itself into a fortress. Joined him there. Do you think we can win? She asked. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he finally admitted. But I know one thing for certain. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. They have no idea what they're about to face. And what is that? Park smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only cold determination. Humanity, he said, a species that has spent its entire existence fighting for survival, a species that crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. They think our short lives make us weak. They don't understand. It makes us desperate. It makes us dangerous. And it makes us absolutely unwilling to accept defeat. Far across the galaxy, the Dominion fleet began its journey toward Earth. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. Their crews were confident and relaxed. This would be an easy conquest, just another primitive species to add to their collection. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Dominion fleet entered the Sol system on a cold December morning. 300 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel near the orbit of Neptune. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of metal and firepower that had crushed countless civilizations before. Warlord stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the human solar system with contempt. It was small and unremarkable. The 3rd planet from the star was blue and green, covered in water and simple plant life. It did not look like the home of warriors. It looked like a farm waiting to be harvested. Status report, he commanded. All ships accounted for, his second officer replied. We are detecting minimal human military presence. A few hundred small vessels near the 4th planet, nothing that poses a threat. Nodded with satisfaction. As expected, these primitives probably don't even understand what they're facing. Begin standard approach. We'll disable their defenses within hours and begin processing the population by tomorrow. The fleet moved inward, passing the outer planets without resistance, allowed himself to relax. This would be the easiest conquest of his long career. Perhaps he would keep one of the humans as a pet. They were small enough to fit in a cage. Captain Lee floated in the darkness of space and waited. Her ship, the S Indomitable, was running silent. No lights, no power, no signals of any kind. To any scanner, it looked like just another piece of space debris drifting near Jupiter. But inside, 200 crew members sat at their stations, barely breathing, waiting for the signal. They had been waiting for 18 days. was 34 years old, small and thin, with short black hair and sharp eyes. Before the war, she had been a cargo ship captain. Now she commanded one of humanity's most advanced warships. She had volunteered for this mission knowing she might not survive. Everyone on her ship had made the same choice. "Contact," her sensor officer whispered. "Dominion fleet passing Jupiter's orbit, 300 ships just as intelligence predicted." Felt her heart beating faster but kept her voice calm. "Wait for the signal." Minutes passed like hours. The Dominion fleet moved closer, completely unaware of the trap they were walking into. They were so confident in their power that they hadn't even raised their shields. Then the signal came, a single pulse of light from a hidden satellite near Europa. All batteries commanded fire. Across the space around Jupiter, hidden weapons platforms came to life. They had been placed there months ago, disguised as asteroids and space junk. Now they revealed their true nature. Rail guns launched metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Nuclear missiles streaked toward their targets. Drone swarms emerged from hidden bases on Jupiter's moons. And leading the attack were 50 human warships, including the Indomitable. The first Dominion ship exploded before its crew even understood what was happening. Then another. Then 5 more. The aliens had never seen weapons like this. Human rail guns fired simple metal slugs, but at speeds that punched through armor like paper. Human missiles were crude and ugly, but they carried enough nuclear fire to turn a warship into dust. Warlord watched in disbelief as his fleet fell apart around him. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Where is this attack coming from?" "Unknown weapons platforms, Warlord. We're detecting 50. No, more than 50 enemy vessels. They were hidden in the debris field." "Hidden for how long?" "Our scans indicate at least 18 days, Warlord." Felt something he had never experienced before in his military career. Fear. These humans had sat in cold, dark ships for 18 days, waiting for this moment. What kind of species could do that? What kind of madness drove them? "Return fire," he screamed. "Destroy them." The Dominion ships finally began to fight back. Their weapons were powerful, far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. When they hit a human ship, it died instantly. But the humans were fast and unpredictable. They moved in strange patterns that the targeting computers couldn't follow. They took insane risks, flying directly into enemy fire to get close enough for a killing shot. Captain Lee flew the Indomitable straight at a Dominion battleship 10 times her size. Her crew fired everything they had. The enemy vessel's shields flickered and died. A final missile found its reactor core. "Target destroyed," her weapons officer reported. 14 confirmed kills for our ship alone. "Don't celebrate yet," replied. "Find me another target." The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, 60 Dominion ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest retreated to the edge of the solar system, their formation broken and their confidence shattered. Humanity had lost 22 ships and over 4,000 people, but they had won. High Prelate received the news in his throne room. He sat in silence for a long time, staring at the casualty reports. 60 ships, in one battle, against a species that wasn't even supposed to have a real military. "This is impossible," he finally said. "No primitive species has ever inflicted such losses on the Dominion, not in our entire history." "The humans fought differently than any species we've encountered," Overseer reported. "They used ambush tactics, hidden weapons, suicide attacks. They seemed willing to die as long as they could take our ships with them." "Willing to die," repeated slowly. The concept was strange to him. They lived for 1,000 years. Every life was precious, worth protecting at any cost. But these humans lived for less than a century. Perhaps death meant something different to them. "What do you recommend?" he asked. Hesitated. "We should reconsider this campaign, High Prelate. These humans are not like other species. They might require more resources than originally planned." More resources, laughed bitterly. We sent a standard pacification fleet, 300 of our finest warships, and they were ambushed by primitives hiding in asteroid fields. He stood up, his 4 arms trembling with rage. No, we will not retreat. We will not negotiate. We will show these humans what happens to species that dare to resist the Dominion. He pressed a button on his throne. Across the galaxy, a signal went out to every Dominion military base. I am declaring humanity a Class 1 threat, announced. For the first time in 400 years, mobilize everything, every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have. These humans want a war. We will give them a war they will never forget. On Earth, Admiral Park watched the Dominion fleet retreat and allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. They had won the first battle, but he knew this was just the beginning. They'll come back stronger, said, standing beside him. Much stronger. I know, Park replied, but now they know something important. They know we can hurt them. They know we won't surrender. And they know that every step they take into our space will cost them blood. Will that be enough? The Admiral turned to look at the stars. Somewhere out there, the greatest military power in the galaxy was preparing to destroy his species. The odds were overwhelming. The outcome was uncertain. But for the first time since this crisis began, he felt something like hope. I don't know if we can win this war, he admitted. But I know one thing. We're going to make them earn every single victory. And by the time this is over, the entire galaxy will know that humanity is not a species to be conquered. We are a species to be feared. The war had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. 18 months had passed since the first battle. The war had spread across multiple star systems, and both sides had learned painful lessons about their enemy. Overseer sat alone in his study, surrounded by books and data files about humanity. He had spent the last year studying everything he could find about this strange species, their history, their culture, their wars. What he had discovered kept him awake at night. He opened a file labeled Human Military History and began reading for the 100th time. The words still shocked him. These creatures had been fighting wars among themselves for their entire existence. They had invented weapons specifically designed to kill their own kind. They had burned cities to the ground. They had starved entire populations into surrender. They had developed something called nuclear weapons and had actually used them on each other. Closed the file and rubbed his tired eyes. They had been fighting wars for 5,000 years, but they had never seen anything like this. When the Dominion conquered a planet, the conquered species would surrender and accept their fate. It was logical. Resistance meant death, and death was the end of everything. But humans didn't think that way. They had a concept they could barely understand. They called it dying for a cause. They believed that some things were more important than survival, freedom, honor, revenge. These were ideas worth dying for. It terrified him. On the colony world of New Sol, Commander Minu was learning firsthand what it meant to fight for survival. The Dominion had landed 50,000 soldiers on the planet 3 months ago. They expected the human colony to fall within days. Instead, Minu and his garrison of 2,000 defenders had turned every building into a fortress and every street into a killing ground. Status report, Minu called out from his command bunker. Western District holding, sir. We lost 40 soldiers last night, but we killed at least 300 of theirs. Eastern District is under heavy pressure. They're running low on ammunition. Minu nodded grimly. Send them everything we can spare. Tell them to hold for 2 more days. Reinforcements are coming. His aide looked at him with exhausted eyes. Are they really coming, sir? We've been saying that for weeks. They're coming, Minu said firmly. Admiral Park promised, and he's never broken a promise yet. The truth was, Minu didn't know if help would arrive in time. Communications with Earth had been cut off for days. The Dominion fleet controlled the space around New Sol. Every day, more of his soldiers died. Every night, the enemy pushed a little closer. But he would not surrender. He had seen what happened to human colonies that surrendered. The Dominion didn't just want obedience. They wanted to break the human spirit completely. They separated families. They erased human culture. They turned people into nothing more than machines. Better to die free than live as a slave. Far away, in a secret laboratory near Earth's moon, Chief Engineer Han was working on something that might change the war. She had spent the last 6 months studying captured technology. At first, it had seemed impossibly advanced. The alien systems were elegant and sophisticated, the product of millions of years of development. Had felt like a child trying to understand a supercomputer. But then she had noticed something interesting. They didn't innovate. They improved existing technology slowly over centuries, but they rarely tried anything truly new. Their weapons hadn't fundamentally changed in thousands of years. Why would they? Nothing had ever forced them to adapt. Humans were different. They had gone from horses to spaceships in less than 300 years. Their technology was crude compared to but it evolved at incredible speed. And now, with alien technology to study, that evolution was accelerating. "It's ready," announced to her team. "The Cascade Disruptor. It targets the field that allows faster-than-light travel. When activated, any ship within range will be unable to enter or exit FTL. They'll be trapped." "Will it work against Dominion ships?" her assistant asked. Smiled. "It will work better against Dominion ships. Their FTL drives are more powerful, which makes them more vulnerable to disruption. We just leveled the playing field." Admiral Park received news of the breakthrough while planning his next campaign. For the first time in months, he felt something like optimism. "This changes everything," he said, studying the specifications. "If we can trap their fleets, prevent them from retreating or calling for reinforcements, we can actually go on the offensive." Finished. "Stop reacting to their attacks and start making our own." Park nodded slowly. "Operation Ember. We've been planning it for months. A strike at their supply lines, cut off their fleets from their bases, make them fight on our terms." "It's risky," warned. "If it fails, we won't have the ships to defend Earth. If we keep playing defense, we'll lose anyway. We're running out of people, running out of ships, running out of time." He looked at the star map showing Dominion-controlled space. They've never had an enemy attack their territory. They don't know how to defend. It's time to teach them fear. 3 weeks later, Operation Ember began. Human fleets appeared in Dominion space without warning, striking at supply stations and communication hubs. The Cascade Disruptors prevented enemy reinforcements from arriving. For the first time in 5,000 years, civilians watched enemy weapons fire light up their skis. Back on New Seoul, Commander Minyu finally received his reinforcements. Admiral Lee herself led the relief fleet, breaking through the Dominion blockade with a combination of skill and reckless courage. "Sorry we're late," said when she met Minyu at the ruined spaceport. "Traffic was terrible." Minyu laughed for the first time in months. "Better late than never, Admiral. Welcome to New Seoul. I hope you brought plenty of ammunition." "Enough to keep fighting," replied. "Admiral Park sends his regards. He says the tide is turning." On the Dominion, High Prelate received reports of human attacks with growing disbelief. They were striking everywhere at once. Small raids that destroyed critical infrastructure and vanished before his fleets could respond. It was like fighting smoke. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "They don't have enough ships for these operations." Overseer hesitated before answering. "They're using captured vessels, High Prelate, ships we thought were destroyed. They repair them, modify them, turn them against us." "That's impossible. Our technology is too advanced for them to understand." "Apparently not," said quietly. "I've been trying to warn you about this species. They learn faster than any civilization we've ever encountered, Every weapon we use against them, they adapt to. Every tactic we try, they counter. They're not just fighting us, they're studying us. Slammed his fist against his throne. Then we need to end this quickly, before they learn too much. Prepare the Grand Fleet, every ship we have. We're going to burn there to ash and scatter their species across the galaxy. Bowed his head, but inside he felt a growing dread. He had studied humans long enough to understand one terrible truth. Destroying Earth wouldn't end this war. It would only make the survivors fight harder. Humans didn't surrender, they didn't forget, and they never ever forgave. The war had reached its turning point. What came next would determine the fate of two civilizations. 3 years of war had changed everything. High Prelate stood before the Dominion Council and faced judgment. The chamber was filled with the leaders of 100 conquered worlds, all staring at him with cold disapproval. His war against humanity had cost the Dominion more than their previous 50 conquests combined. 2,000 ships destroyed, the council speaker announced. 17 supply stations burned, 4 colony worlds lost to rebellion, and still these humans refused to surrender. Explain yourself, High Prelate. Had no explanation that would satisfy them. He had promised a quick victory against a primitive species. Instead, he had delivered the worst military disaster in Dominion history. The humans are unlike any enemy we have faced, he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. They fight without logic, without self-preservation. They continue attacking even when victory is impossible. I have never seen anything like it. Then perhaps you are not the right commander for this war, another council member suggested. Felt fear grip his heart. Being removed from command would mean disgrace. Death, possibly. He needed a victory, and he needed it soon. Give me one more chance, he pleaded. I will take the Grand Fleet to there. I will burn their cities and break their will once and for all. This war will end. The council debated for hours. In the end, they gave him what he wanted, but they made it clear that this was his final opportunity. Success or death. There would be no third chance. Left the chamber and immediately ordered his fleet to prepare for the assault on Earth. The attack came without warning. Admiral Park was in a strategy meeting when the alarms began screaming. He ran to the command center and felt his blood turn cold at what he saw on the screens. Over 500 Dominion warships were emerging from FTL travel near Earth's moon. It was the largest enemy fleet humanity had ever seen. They had brought everything. Cascade disruptors are not working, an officer reported, voice trembling with fear. They've found a way to counter them. Get our defense fleet into position, Park commanded. All civilian vessels are to evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. The battle began within minutes. Human ships threw themselves against the Dominion armada, buying time for evacuation shuttles to escape. But there were too many enemy vessels. For every one they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Then the bombardment started. Dominion ships began firing on Earth's surface. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, Moscow, great cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to burning ruins in moments. Billions of people watched the sky turn to fire and knew that death was coming for them all. Captain Lee, now Admiral Lee, led the desperate defense. Her flagship was burning, half its crew dead, but she refused to retreat. All ships focus fire on their command vessel, she ordered. If we can kill their leader, maybe they'll withdraw. Admiral, our weapons can't penetrate their shields at this range. Then get closer. Her bridge crew stared at her in shock. Getting closer meant flying directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. It was suicide. You heard me, said calmly. Today is a good day to die. Let's make sure we take some of them with us. On the surface of Earth, Doctor stood in the ruins of what had been her research center. Around her, rescue workers dug through rubble, searching for survivors. The sky was dark with smoke and ash. She had spent her entire life studying alien civilizations. She had dreamed of first contact, of peaceful cooperation between species. Instead, she had watched her world burn. But even now, standing in the ashes of everything she had worked for, she felt no despair, only cold, hard determination. Humanity would survive this. They always survived. That was what made them human. Warlord walked through the wreckage of a destroyed human city. He had led ground forces in dozens of conquests, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans had fought for every street, every building, every room. Even when their weapons ran out, they had attacked with knives, with rocks, with their bare hands. Had watched a human soldier charge his position carrying nothing but a piece of broken metal. The soldier had known he was going to die. He had charged anyway. "Why do they fight like this?" asked one of his officers. "They must know they cannot win." "Perhaps they don't care about winning," the officer suggested. "Perhaps they only care about making us pay for every step." Thought about this for a long time. He had served the Dominion for 500 years. He had helped conquer dozens of species, but he had never felt like this before. He felt tired, sick, wrong. He requested permission to speak with some human prisoners. Was too focused on the battle to care, so he granted it. The prisoners were held in a makeshift camp near the landing zone. Most were wounded. All were defiant. They stared with hatred in their eyes, even though they knew he could kill them with a single gesture. Approached an older man, a sergeant based on his uniform markings. The man had lost an arm in the fighting but refused any treatment. "I have a question," said. "Your species is clearly losing this war. Your planet is burning. Your people are dying. Why do you continue to fight? What do you hope to achieve?" The sergeant looked at him for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. "You really don't understand, do you?" The man shook his head slowly. "We're not fighting to win. We're fighting because that's what humans do, because surrender isn't in our nature, because every one of your soldiers we kill is one less that our children will have to face." "But you might not have children," pointed out. "Your species might be extinct by tomorrow." "Maybe," the sergeant agreed, "but maybe not. Humans are hard to kill. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that should have destroyed us 100 times over. We're still here. And even if you kill every last one of us, we'll make sure you remember us. 1,000 years from now, when your children ask about the humans, you'll tell them stories about this day, about the species that made the mighty Dominion bleed." Had no response. He left the camp and walked back to his command post in silence. That night, he looked up at the burning sky and made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. He contacted Overseer through a secure channel. "I'm done," he said simply. "This war is wrong. These creatures, they're not like the others. They shouldn't be conquered. They should be left alone." "The High Prelate will never accept that," replied. "I know. That's why I'm coming to you. You've studied these humans. You understand them better than anyone. Help me find a way to end this madness before it destroys us all." Was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke words that would change the course of history. "I've been waiting for someone to ask me that. I think I might have an idea." In space above Earth, Admiral Lee's desperate charge had done the impossible. Her flagship, burning and broken, had crashed directly into High Prelate's command ship. The collision had destroyed both vessels and killed hundreds on each side, but had survived barely. She floated in the wreckage, suit torn, oxygen running low, and watched the Dominion fleet pause in confusion. Their commander was dead. Their formation was broken. She smiled through cracked lips and blood-stained teeth. "Your turn to be afraid," she whispered. "Welcome to the human experience." 4 years of war, millions dead, 2 civilizations changed forever. Admiral Park stood before what remained of humanity's military leadership. They were gathered in an underground bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, one of the few places on Earth that still had working communication equipment. The people in this room were tired, wounded, and grieving, but they were not defeated. High Prelate is dead, Park announced. Admiral Lee killed him 3 weeks ago during the attack on Earth. The Dominion fleet has retreated to regroup. For the first time since this war began, we have a chance to strike back. Strike back with what? Someone asked bitterly. We've lost half our fleet, 3 of our major colonies. Earth itself is in ruins. We still have ships, we still have soldiers, and most importantly, we still have the will to fight. Park brought up a star map showing the Dominion. I'm proposing Operation Homecoming, a direct strike at Prime. The room erupted in shocked protests. Attack the enemy with what was left of their battered forces. It was madness. Park waited for silence before continuing. I know it sounds impossible. We can't conquer them. We don't have the forces. But that's not the goal. The goal is to send a message. To show the entire galaxy that humanity will never be broken, that any species that attacks us will pay a price so high they'll never recover. He paused, looking at each face in the room. The Dominion has ruled through fear for 5,000 years. Today, we teach them what fear really means. The vote was unanimous. 2,000 human ships gathered at the edge of Dominion space. It was everything humanity had left. Every warship, every armed transport, every vessel that could carry a weapon. The crews knew this might be a one-way journey. They volunteered anyway. Doctor addressed the fleet before they departed. She stood on the bridge of the flagship, her voice broadcast to every ship in the formation. 4 years ago, the Dominion gave us a choice. Surrender or die. We chose neither. We chose to fight. They called us primitives. They said we would be forgotten in a generation. They were wrong. Today we carry the fire of our fallen to the heart of their empire. Today we remind them that humans do not forget, and we do not forgive. For Earth, for everyone we've lost. Let's go show them what humanity is made of. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. Destination, Prime. Overseer watched the human fleet approaching on his tactical display. He had known this moment would come. He had tried to warn the Dominion leadership, but they hadn't listened. Now it was too late for warnings. Warlord stood beside him, no longer wearing his military insignia. He had officially resigned from command after the attack on Earth. The things he had seen there had changed him forever. "Can we stop them?" asked quietly. "Our defensive fleet is large enough," replied, "but stopping them will cost us dearly. These humans, they're not coming to win, they're coming to hurt us. They know they might die, they've accepted it." "What kind of species accepts death so easily?" Smiled sadly. "One that has learned to see death as a price worth paying for something greater than themselves. It's their greatest strength, and their greatest tragedy." The Battle of Prime began at dawn. Human ships emerged from FTL travel directly above the Dominion capital. It was the most audacious attack in galactic history. No enemy had threatened this world in 5,000 years. The people below had never even seen a war. Now they watched human weapons light up their sky. Chief Engineer Hans Cascade disruptors tore through the defensive platforms. Commander Minu led ground assault teams that struck at military installations. Admiral Lee, recovered from her injuries and more determined than ever, commanded the main fleet engagement with cold precision. The Dominion defenders fought hard, but they were confused and afraid. This wasn't how war was supposed to work. They were the conquerors, not the conquered. They were supposed to be safe here, in the heart of their empire. The new High Prelate, a younger official named, watched his world under attack and felt true terror for the first time in his long life. "How did this happen?" he demanded. "How did these primitives reach our—" "They're not primitives," said calmly. "They never were, we just couldn't see it because they didn't look like us. They don't live as long, they don't have natural armor, but they have something we lack." "What?" "Heart, will, the absolute refusal to accept defeat no matter the cost." Turned to face the High Prelate directly. "This war needs to end, now, before we lose everything." And they attacked we should destroy them completely. We've been trying to destroy them for 4 years, interrupted. All we've done is make them stronger. Every world we burned, every city we destroyed just gave them more reason to fight. They're not like us. They get stronger when you hurt them. The battle raged for 3 days. In the end, humanity didn't conquer Prime. They didn't have the forces for that. But they proved something far more important. They proved that no one was safe from human vengeance. High Prelate sued for peace on the 4th day. Admiral Park met with the Dominion representatives on a neutral station between the 2 territories. He came alone, unarmed, showing no fear even though he was surrounded by beings who had tried to exterminate his species. "You've made your point," said bitterly. "What are your terms?" Park's terms were simple: mutual non-aggression, full prisoner exchange, recognition of human sovereignty over their territories, no reparations, no demands for territory, no revenge. That's all seemed confused. After everything we did to your people, you could demand so much more. I could, Park agreed. But that's not what humanity needs. We need peace. We need time to rebuild. And honestly, we need you to leave us alone and tell every other species in the galaxy to do the same. The treaty was signed within the hour. 1 year later, a memorial was built on Prime, not by humans but by the Dominion itself. It stood in the central plaza of their capital city, a simple pillar of black stone with words carved in both and human languages. The inscription read, "To those who taught us that some species cannot be conquered, let their lesson never be forgotten." Overseer visited the memorial often. He had written several books about humanity since the war ended. They were required reading at military academies throughout Dominion space. The lessons were simple. Do not mistake short lives for weakness. Do not assume primitive technology means primitive minds. And above all, never threaten something a human loves. Across the galaxy, other species learned about the war. Word spread from system to system, world to world. The story of the small, fragile creatures who had stood against the mightiest empire in history and refused to break. Some species were inspired, some were terrified, all were changed. On Earth, humanity began to rebuild. Cities rose from the ashes, families reunited. Children were born who would never know the fear of Dominion ships in their sky. Admiral Park retired to a small house by the ocean. He spent his days fishing and watching the waves. Sometimes, Admiral Lee would visit, and they would sit together in comfortable silence, 2 old soldiers who had seen too much. "Do you think they'll ever try again?" asked once. Park smiled and shook his head. "No, they learned their lesson. They thought we were weak because we die so easily. They didn't understand that's exactly why we fight so hard. Every moment matters when you don't have forever. Every battle counts when you might not see tomorrow." He looked up at the stars, where human ships were once again exploring the galaxy. But this time, they were met with respect instead of contempt. This time, other species welcomed them as equals. "They tried to wage war on humans," he said quietly. "They learned what that means, and they'll never forget." In the great archives of the Dominion, the war was recorded as the greatest defeat in their 5,000-year history. When young asked their elders why the empire no longer expanded, why they treated other species with caution instead of contempt, the answer was always the same. "We tried to conquer humanity once. We will never try again." The galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest but they had something no other civilization could match. A fire that burned in their hearts, a stubbornness that refused all logic, a will that could not be broken, no matter the cost. They were humanity, and they would never surrender.